Hello and welcome back to the ministry. This is Taj McCameron, and I'm coming back with part 2 of the Snow White and the Huntsman review. So, as we know, Snow White just got out of the prison. So, she locks the gate and she goes to run to get back into the main part of the castle. She notices the people are parading around outside. There are men. There's one that as she's running through, she recognizes him, and she sees one of the guards coming towards her, so she runs and slides into one of the drains. Look, your enemies don't understand. You ain't stupid, nor are you dumb. Okay? Some of you got skills. Some of you, they thinking that, oh, she's just a little peasant child. She's one not to be bothered. But you've got one of two things. Either you are physically acclimated or you are so spiritually acclimated, your intelligence level is, you ain't one to be played with. You have the ability to think quickly, think swiftly, and get out of situations. Remember, I did MacGyver if you missed my MacGyver reviews, go back and look at my MacGyver reviews, because I reviewed 2 episodes. It's 321. MacGyver was all about getting out of tight situations, okay? So you know how to get out of tight situations. God has given you the ability to discernment of, for it says in his word, what? For God always gives you a way to escape, does he not? You know how to get out of some tight situations, no matter what it looked like. He has trained you up and trained you up well on how not to be fooled, how not to just slip into circumstances that you can't get out of, because he shows you a way of escape. She slid into that drain and she saw the people coming, and she was like, oh Lord, because she realized that there was only one way out, and that was down. For some of you, you're going to have to take a leap. God has given you a level of instruction. I just saw a bus that says 22. You can look at that as 22:22. Isaiah 22:22. God is opening a door that man cannot shut. God's closing doors that man cannot open. So, some of you are supposed to take a leap. A leap of faith. God's preparing to create a situation and a scenario that is going to shift you and transition you. I was just listening to Yanni Nev's word this morning, and she was talking about the fact that God has been giving you answers, clear no's and clear yeses. So you have instructions as to what you're supposed to do, where you're supposed to go, how you're supposed to do it. If you don't know, seek the Lord for the instruction. Stay in his face, because right now is a pivotal time, because he's preparing to open doors for you. And when God says it's time to go, it's time to go. I don't care what it looks like. Some of you might not like it. Some of y'all got parents. Some of y'all got family. You got siblings. It's like, but does it not say in his word? Is it Luke or is it Isaiah? One of the scriptures, don't quote me on the number, but it states, I will leave mother, father, sister, brother, wives, for the glory of God. And God says go. For my Rebeccas. Hey, Rebecca. When the servant comes to pick you up, you're going to tell him, I can't go yet, because do not allow them to tell you 10 days. Meaning, do not give your family the ability to keep you another 10 days, because that's 10 days that they're going to project their opinions on you and get you into fear, frustration, and prevent you from taking the leap. The opportunity is coming, the situation is coming, the shift is coming. It's coming. Sit in the presence of the Lord, and he's going to give you direction as to how to operate and which way to go. But when he says go, I've been seeing it all over the place. It's time to go. Go. God giving them the go, the green light, the go. Go. She jumped into the water and washed up on the beach. When she washed up on the beach, guess what was sitting there? A white horse. Do you know what the white horse represents? Oh, let me help you out with that. Let me take you to Revelation 6, the seals. I watched as a lamb opened the first of the 7 seals, and then I heard one of the 4 living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. The rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. She gets up out of the water, walks over to the horse that just seemingly was sitting there waiting for her, gets on it, and rides it back through the castle. When she gets there, it's that moment. And in this moment, it reminds me of a scene in the movie Inception when everybody turned, when they came to the recognition that Leonardo DiCaprio and the girl were not part of the dream realm. When they all looked at her, they looked at her as if they were dead zombie drones, and they were looking at her as an enemy. Then she saw the castle's people come running towards her. She took the horse, turned, and ran into the forest. And they began chasing her. Okay? Your enemy has been on your tail for a while. Lord, lead me on this. Lord, your enemy's been on your tail for a while, but they have not been able to capture you, which brings me to this. Listen to me here. You are Elisha. Remember when Elisha and the king and the queen were looking for Elijah, but Obadiah came to the king and the queen and came to Elijah and said, "I'm not going to the king and the queen. You're going to disappear again." That's what you've been doing. You've been disappearing. Every time the queen looked for you, could not find you. But he was given instruction to reveal himself to the queen. And he said, "I'm not going to run this time." Obadiah said, "I don't trust you. I don't trust that you're not going to run again." And he says, "The Lord done told me I can't run." Go. There's a secondary note I need to give you right here. I released a word called, "Your husband is at the gate." You hear that? It's an alarm. You hear that? That means pay attention. I'm going to need you to go look up the word, "Your husband is at the gate." Okay? There is a maneuver in that word. That's a 4-part review of that scripture. I'm not doing that scripture in this because I already did it over there. Okay? You're going to get revelation if you go over there and watch it. If I'm not mistaken, I might be wearing the exact same clothes in that word too. Was I? No, I don't think I was. But yeah, you need to pay attention to that. Go watch. Your husband is at the gate. Search my name. Search Your Husband's at the Gate. It's 4 parts. Go watch it. Now, with that being said, hold on, let me get back to the note. So, she rode the horse into the forest, and it's a whole bunch of vines, it's a whole bunch of things. Now, what I did not tell you, which I forgot to mention in the previous part, that when the queen came in and she took over the castle, therefore taking over the throne room, she thereby sent out some type of spiritual edict that anything around the castle and the grounds of the castle was to die. The forest, anything in that forest, to die. Anything that touched that ground was poisoned. An apple touched the ground. It was consumed by the ground and it liquefied into a poisonous substance. Okay? It's the dead forest for a reason. Okay? So she's now in the forest and she's starting to feel the effect of the forest. The horse runs and ends up getting caught in the mud. The mud is like quicksand. The Lord's giving me the scripture right now. Let's go there. Matthew. Therefore, in Matthew 7, I'm starting on verse 24, the wise and the foolish builders. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and put them into practice is like a wise man who builds a house on a rock. And the rain came down in streams and rose, and the winds blew, beating against the house, and yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. The rain came down and streams rose and the winds blew and beat against the house and it fell with a great crash. It's like building on quicksand. There's a version that literally refers to it as sinking sand. Okay? When she was on the horse started to sink into the ground. And the horse started to pull away from her at that point. And she fell off the horse, was thrown from the horse, and she tries to get back on it or try to help it. She tries to touch it, but the horse won't let her touch it. And it's starting to get pulled into the muck of the ground because the mud is loose and saturated and icky. And she stands up and starts to move, but she's starting to feel the effects of the forest. Some of you, if you know, you know. For my intercessors that have dealt with witchcraft, you know, you know. I learned this lesson when I was in New York, that when you're under the influence of witchcraft, it will sometimes feel like dizzy, spells, nausea, all of this kind of stuff. Sometimes the heavier, the sicker you feel. She started to get dizzy, woozy, queasy, all this kind of stuff. And she's moving and maneuvering until she passes out. The queen is screaming at the top of her lungs. What do you mean you lost her? You had a simple instruction. You were just supposed to bring her to me. And you telling me that you lost her. What do you mean? For some of you, listen to me carefully if you did not notice. Your enemy, whoever this enemy individual is, I just saw 333, giving you knowledge that you did not know. Okay, for some of you, whoever it is that you are meant to replace, they know that you're there to replace them. They thought they had you captive. They thought they had you under bondage. They thought they had you under legal tyranny and subduement. But the Lord always gives you a way of an escape. And now they've come to the realization, now that you are free to a degree, there's a potential that their position is under threat. She was angry and yelling at this man. And the Lord said to me to describe it like this. There are 3 men that you are going to see in this film, okay? Now, you may not understand why I'm going to say it this way, but the point I'm going to make, the Lord brought me to this revelation. This is what he gave me. Don't kill the messenger. I'm going to just explain it the way the Lord showed me. The brother is like Obadiah. He's the assistant that works for Ahab and Jezebel, okay? That's what the brother is. That's who he's yelling at. Who she's yelling at right now. Your God-ordained spouse sometimes was operating in this position. How is your God-ordained spouse operating in this position? Because the way that the counterfeit was holding this man in place, she used manipulative tactics to speak to him in such ways to downgrade, degrade, condemn, and make him feel like absolute foolery. Ashamed, judged, like absolute poop is what she tried to make this man feel like in order to keep him under her finger. Because this woman said, how could you do this to me? I'm your queen. What do you mean you let her go? Making him feel like it was his fault. And people that operate under the spirit, and I know some of y'all, as I'm speaking this, are hooting and hollering because you know somebody that'll do this to you. The second that they seem like they are potentially going to be cornered or an argument can come to blame them, they turn the argument to make it look like it's your fault. And they give you a very good reason why it's your fault in order to make you start to believe it's your fault. And that's exactly what she was doing. She was making him believe that it was his fault. So, she will switch up in a minute. I just explained that. They've come to the realization they need somebody that can go into the dark woods because can't none of them go into the dark woods because it's like they ain't going in there. So they need to go find somebody. And there's a drunkard man. And this individual, which is the huntsman, also represents your God-ordained spouse. That's the third man. This individual is the protector. See how this is leading? It almost sets you up for the bodyguard that's coming. I know some of y'all already done high-fived me on the bodyguard. We coming, it's coming. I know you see it. But you gonna get it. It's coming. So, with that being said, understand that this huntsman, and I'm being reminded of 3 things right now. I'm being reminded of the review I did. Go back and look at, if you didn't see it, your love broke the curse. I think it is. It's the hearts that are broken as chain links. The character that played Buffy's boyfriend, he had this kind of life. He operated in this kind of living. When he first came to being in his time frame when he was out there in the world, he was living a lewd, prodigal lifestyle. And it's funny, I saw a video from Bold for Christ, but didn't get a chance to look at it. It was from a year ago where she was talking about their prodigal living was not the lifestyle that God wanted for them. And they've come to the realization that's not what God wanted. Now, you can go look that up. But that's not what God wanted. So you go look at it if you feel it. Go look up Bold for Christ. Look up the one, it's a wall. And it looks like it's got a bunch of holes punched into it. Okay? And the entire environment just looks like it's been torn up. Okay? So, their prodigal living. He was a prodigal. He's prodigally living out there and shystering people and all this kind of stuff. And he is knocked onto the ground. When he gets knocked onto the ground, he gets pulled through the ground into a tub of water. And they use witchcraft to pull him there. This reminds me, if you go and look up, your God-ordained spouse is leaping towards you. It was a 6-part word that I released on the season finale of Quantum Leap. In it, if you just look at part 1, you ain't got to look at none of the other parts in particularly, but this part, it talks about the fact that there is a witchcraft pull. The enemy is using witchcraft to pull these men and hold on to them. That's what if you look at the way that the film The Little Mermaid operates, and Megan Michelle, I talked about this. Go back into my community post. I link her video where she's doing a review of the Little Mermaid, right? And she's talking about the witchcraft. And I talk about the segment that she talks about the Little Mermaid in. I already have the link to the time-stamped in that post. Ursula, she actually was operating in witchcraft, right? It's that kind of witchcraft that pulled and held your God-ordained spouse back away from you. Remember, I did the review for All His Love is Waiting for You, and I talk about the Harpoon Hook. That's what these individuals, the counterfeit, the Jezebel's character was doing. She used a harpoon hook to hold your spouse at the neck, okay, to keep him away from you, pulling him at her beck and call. That's also what she was doing when I say that Obadiah and your kingdom spouse and what else? Yeah, the huntsman. All three can fit together because the queen uses these individuals. Okay? And these all three can be one in this example that the Lord's given me. I don't know, just follow me. This is what the Lord said. And with that being said, they used their form of manipulation, twisting of words, that Levi spirit. You know the spirit I'm talking about. In order to bring about chaos, confusion, all this kind of stuff, in order to keep you in confusion. You understand what I'm saying? To keep you operating in the wrong heart posture. You know what I'm saying, right? To keep you, to keep that man in the wrong heart posture and to keep him tied down. So they took him to the queen. When they took him to the queen said, we need you to go in the woods, and we need you to go retrieve a prisoner of ours. And they said, good luck, they probably did. They said, we need you to go get this girl. And they were like, good luck, she probably did. Oh, she most certainly is dead. And the queen said, look, I need you to go in there and I'm going to need you to get her. He said, what's it to you? For what reason? For what reason would you have me go into the woods to go? Why is this person so important to you? So instead of answering his question, the queen has him bow before her by taking all of her men and knocking him down. This was the point. This is what the enemy did to your God-ordained spouse. Held him hostage, put him at their beck and call, and then manipulated to whatever capacity. And she said, look, your wife died. Do you want me to bring that in here? Well, I might as well say it. She said, your wife died. I'll bring your wife back for you if you go get her for me. He said, really? Yes. Go get her. Please. Now your God-ordained spouse turns into who? Samson. In the story of Samson, what happens? At the very beginning, most people skim over this part. But the fact of the matter is, Samson also was grieving a woman. He was in love, right? He fell in love. He desired. He wanted to marry. He had a desire for this individual, right? And he wanted to marry her, right? He was planning to marry her. In the film of Samson, she was brought out before the fortress, and this is actually in alignment to a degree with the actual story line, that the night before the wedding, she was taken up to the tower by his enemy after he got the answer that he wanted about the riddle. And then she was killed and thrown off of the castle wall. Remember? And remember how Samson was just destroyed and distraught behind that loss? I'm going to come back to that. Follow. So he goes into the woods behind her to try to find her. He finds her quickly. He ain't even in the woods more than, it looked like no more than 15 minutes. He goes in there. He's got the brother behind him. They get in there. They immediately find him. But as soon as he finds her, a brother's standing there, and he's like, good, give her to me. And she says, no, don't give me to them. And he says, why? For what reason? I don't trust none of y'all. For what? Some of y'all, you got a spouse, the situation that he got himself caught up in. At the time that Jezebel came to him, he didn't care or give a darn about nothing anyway. So he got caught up because he didn't care. When you came to him, he still ain't care. He's like, why am I going to care about her? For what? What's in it for me? What? Why should I care? I don't give a darn. For what capacity should that be a matter that should matter to me in any way, shape, or form? And she's trying to sound, I can help you. I can do this. I can do that. And he's like, I still don't care. And I don't trust you. And then he turns and he's like, I can help you. She's like, I can help you. And she's like, I am important. She doesn't explain to the capacity of her importance. And he looks her in the face. And he knows that she has to be important for them to even have wanted him to come in there in the first place. So she must be a bargaining chip to some capacity. So he turns and he grabs a sword, I think he had an axe. And he's like, I got her. So what? I need you to go get my wife. And the brother's like, give her to us first. He said, I need you to bring my wife back first. Then I'll give her to y'all. And the guy says, to what capacity of an imbecile are you? Do you really think that my sister has the ability to bring your wife back from the dead? She only told you that so that you would get her. And he's like, oh. And he ends up getting into a fight. She takes off running again. He fights and knocks everybody down. I'm being reminded of the scene in Samson. In the film Samson. But the scripture, remember when Samson takes the jawbone of was it a donkey or a lion? I forget. Either way, it was a jawbone. And he beats all the men that came to attack him out there. That's exactly what he does. He beats all them dudes behinds, including the brother, and then turn around and runs behind her. Okay? With that having happened, he follows her into the woods. He finds her. Meanwhile, the information is brought back to the Duke William, which she had been trying to find ever since she talked to the young girl Gretchen when she was still in the dungeon to find out whether Duke was still alive. He is still alive, but they found out that she's alive. So the Duke's father goes to William, his son, to tell William she's still alive. The Duke tells him, and he goes into the woods after her, referring to Sleeping Beauty. I did a review on the film Sleeping Beauty. Go look at it. I think it's about 3 parts. Beautiful review. And it's going to explain to you what it takes when you have to go through, especially for your kingdom spouse, in trying to go through and find you, okay? in the spiritual journey in which he had to go through in order to break all of the strongholds and strong ties, curses, generational bondages, all of that in order to get to you. Next, the reason and the fact that in Sleeping Beauty, the Sleeping Beauty was betrothed to marry the Duke's son. Okay? But they hid her in the woods for 16 years to prevent her from being hurt or harmed because the queen's sister wanted to kill her. Same Jezebelic character. Go watch that review and come back. Okay? We're coming to the end of this one anyway, so you'll have a little bit of time to get yourself together to watch that one, because I'm more than likely going to put that up. Put the next parts up tomorrow. Now, you as Snow White have been taking the long route, and it's so interesting. Stephanie P just did a video today, actually, called Take Your Time, Relax, and she talks about the long route. God took you the long way because there were people, places, situations, and scenarios that the Lord used in order to bless you and you to bless others along the process. Was uncomfortable for you. You didn't like the process, but it was necessary in order to get you to where you needed to go and out from under the radar of your enemies. The queen couldn't go into the dark forest, but you, having the ability to be able to go into these places and dark spaces, were protected. This explains to any of you that you are wondering, why did I have to go through homelessness? Why did I have to go through losing my job? Why did I have to go through living in a hotel? Why did I have to go through living this way? Why did I have to go through living that way? He took you the long route in order to protect you from what the enemy was trying to do. Because if he took you straight away, Diani knows in the video that I connected to my YouTube states, God had you in a protective bunker. He allowed you to go that route because the enemy could not detect your way and your route if you went that route. Okay? I can't go too much more detail in it until the next one. But I'm going to be back. You're going to see it in the next video. More than likely, it's going to be tomorrow. So until next time, bye-bye.